about 10-15 seconds, and then you can start.
Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Islip Planning Board meeting for Wednesday, March the 10th. If you're just joining us and you have not already signed up to speak, please hit the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen and let us know which application you're here to speak on, and we'll sign you up. We ask applicants to please keep their presentations to 30 minutes or less, and we ask the members of the community to please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. We'll let you know as the time is getting close to the allotted time for you. That being said, I just want to do a quick roll call and we'll start the meeting. Mr. Brown?
Present.
Mr. Bruno?
Present.
Ms. Cruz?
Here.
Mr. Frugiari?
I'm here.
Mr. Matamore?
Here.
And Mr. Moriarty is excused for this evening. Ms. Snyder, can you hear everyone okay?
I can hear everybody fine. Thank you.
Perfect. Let's go right into the agenda. Item 1 on the agenda, Yam Ya Inc. PB 2021-003, south side of West Suffolk Avenue, County Route 17, Central Islip, 70 West Suffolk Avenue. Applicant requests a planning board special permit for a minor restaurant in the Business 2 district pursuant to 68-287.1A. Site plan modifications may also be requested as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant. Unmute and you're ready to go. Mr. Hines, when you're ready, you can go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good evening. Nice to see you all. I don't know if you can see me. Here we go. There we are. How are you all?
Can see you now.
Appearing with me this evening, if they are able to get on, I see Horace Patrick is on, one of the principals in the company. His partner, Kirk Pusey, may be joining us. Mr. Patrick is a successful businessman in electrical engineering. Mr. Pusey is a decorated member of the Marine Corps, still in federal service, and both family men, and significantly for our purposes here this evening, both of them with long involvement in community-based youth sports programs. Their interest in this site in Central Islip and their plans to open businesses in similar communities elsewhere on Long Island are part of their long-term mission to have these local businesses actively support community-based sports programs for youths. Some of their own children were blessed with having attained a national prominence in sports, stemming from early involvement in community programs, which of course open up great academic and life opportunities for them. Simply put, these gentlemen want to keep kids off the streets, and this eatery is part of their mission. We are requesting a special permit for a minor restaurant with 8 seats for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Specializing in Caribbean fare, the name Niam Ya is Jamaican for eat here. And the exclamation point basically denotes you're going to like it. The shopping center itself is bounded on the south by the Long Island Railroad main line, on the north, of course, by Suffolk Avenue. We are not aware of any complaints or issues associated with the operation of the shopping center or any of its tenancies. The proposed special permit and site modification conditions are quite acceptable to us, and we thank Ms. Wozniak for her attention in preparing them. We are in the process of having them circulated for signature, and the town will have them shortly. This, in brief, is our application. We're happy to answer any questions and otherwise respectfully request your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. I do not see anyone signed up to speak at the public hearing. Did anyone join the meeting late who wishes to be heard? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to ask Ms. Wozniak to give us a report.
Project property is located on the southwest corner of West Suffolk Avenue and North Peters Boulevard in Central Islip. The property is improved with an 11,000 square foot multi-tenant building with a mix of restaurant and retail uses. Tonight, the applicant is looking to convert a former retail space into a Jamaican restaurant. The proposed minor restaurant will be approximately 1,150 square feet with 8 seats. This board has granted several minor restaurant applications over the past several years for this building, bringing the total parking relaxation for the site to 26%. Overall, the site is in good condition and this application is consistent with similar approvals made by this board. So based on this, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions which allow the board to impose additional conditions should parking become an issue.
Thank you, Ms. Wozniak. I've been up to the site. I can tell you the landscaping and the rest is in very good condition. I have no questions for the applicant. Does any member of the board have questions? Not seeing anyone. Mr. Hines, would you like to add anything else?
Not at all. We appreciate your consideration. I'd like to say hello to Member Cruz. I think this is my maiden voyage since her membership, and I wish you fair forward winds.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Motion
Mr.
to
Frugieri.
close this public hearing and grant this application subject to the conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Frugieri. There's a motion by Mr. Frugieri to close the public hearing and grant the application subject to the conditions. Is there a second? Second.
I will second.
I'm going to give that second to Ms. Cruz. All in favor?
aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted. Thank you. Have a good evening. Good luck with the business.
You as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 2 on the agenda, Planning Board Application Public Hearing, Coons Family Limited Partnership, PB 2021-004, west side of Lakeland Avenue, County Route 93, approximately 762 feet north of Union Parkway, Ronkonkoma, 1950 Lakeland Avenue. Applicant requests a Planning Board special permit for a vehicle repair shop in the Business 3 District pursuant to 68-302.1C. Applicant also requests a modification of architectural elevations approved in TC 5277. Site plan modifications may also be requested as part of this application. The applicant is ready. Are we taking the two of these together or separately?
You have them as two separate applications.
Okay.
Item 2 and then item 3. One is at 1950, the other is 1900.
Okay, so then let's go ahead with item number 2 as called.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Eric Russo. I'm with the law firm of Van Brunt, Jesuiak and Russo with offices at 140 Main Street in Sayville, New York. And I'm here representing the applicant, which in this particular case is Lakeland Avenue 2 LLC, and Lynn Kunzrio is the managing member. The application, that's the property owner, I'm sorry. The applicant is Kunz Family Limited Partnership. We're before you as stated in the call of the meeting for a special permit for motor vehicle repair in the Business 3 District pursuant to section 68-302-1C. We comply with all the requirements of the special permit, which we have reviewed with Kelly Wozniak, who has been reviewing our application. The business has been ongoing and existing. We're seeking a modification of architectural elevations under TC 5277 from previously Hawkins Webb Yeager, March 15, 2017, 2,000 square foot to now we're at 15,000 square feet. We have provided elevations to you for the board to review, which show the stacked stone veneer on the front of the building. Added was a eyebrow in terms of a roof over and signage. It is a metal clad building, but we tried to spruce it up and make it look with white and blue and silvers in color. And there will also be a trim around the windows and the rake of the roof trim. In addition, we have site plan modifications. And with me this evening is also Scott Reisinger and Ken Van Helden from Nelson and Pope, who should have also been called into the meeting, who will describe for you the site plan modifications as they relate to parking, drainage, and the concrete pad for the site. We have not received any conditions from the planning staff. Ms. Wozniak and I discussed this. Your board has not seen the elevations until this evening. And so there were also questions that planning raised that some of the board members had put to her concerning the concrete and the motor vehicle repair issue on site. So that's why there are no conditions at this particular point in time. I've provided you with, and I think Ms. Wozniak may have shared, approximately 20 photos that I took within the last Thursday and Friday of last week that show you the existing site, show you the properties to the north and to the south, up and down on Lakeland, as well as across the street. I would like, and we've also provided you with floor plans for the existing buildings that is there, which is the motor vehicle repair in the back, which is approximately 2,500 square feet. And we have provided a elevation for that building for the board to review as well. We've given also a floor plan for the newly proposed 15,000 square foot building. What I would like at this time is to have Mr. Scott Reisinger from Nelson and Pope review with you the site plan so that you understand what the changes are that are being proposed.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Scott Reisinger from Nelson and Pope, Hawkins, Webb and Jager, 70 Maxis Road, Millville, New York. I'm the engineer who worked on the site plans that you see before you. The project originally started a few years back, and we had garnered some approvals on this site. In the course of some time, the site plan has changed, and as being requested this evening, and you heard from Mr. Russo, the elevations, the building changed, so the elevations have been updated, and that is what is before you today for the 1,500 square foot new building that is proposed on the site, which also leads to some of the site changes.
Trailers.
The parking that used to be on the site was shifted around, so it is now on the north side of the proposed building. All of that area is proposed to be paved, and all of the repair of the vehicles that is occurring on site, the vehicles will be stored on the paved portion of the site. The site has not changed with respect to the front of the site where the landscaping is to remain. There's an estate fence that is proposed across the front, and there is outdoor sales area in front of the building for the repaired vehicles that will be offered for sale. Some of the other site modifications, we increased the drainage and other minor site modifications to comply with engineering. And I will entertain any questions that you have.
If you notice from the photographs that I provided, you will see that the trucks that are in the front of the building are new vehicles. And then as you go around the site, you will see that there are used vehicles that have been repaired and prepped for sale for people who aren't interested in buying current sales models. And then it shows you all the rest of the equipment that is going there based on the photos I gave you. If you also look in the photos, you'll see that immediately to the north is a landscape contracting type of business where they're doing, I want to say grinding of wood, if you can see it in one of the photos. And then to the south, there is another industrial use to the south. And across the street is Suffolk Bus Transportation Company, which is shown in the photos as well.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Russo, on the application?
I have nothing further unless you have any questions of us.
Well,
Ms. Rios is with me here. She's not on the screen. And if you have questions, we'll be happy to respond.
great. At this point, I'm going to go to the public hearing, go for a staff report, and then we'll come back for questions. I don't see anybody signed up to speak on this application. Did anybody join the meeting late who wishes to be heard? I'm not seeing anyone. I'm going to turn to Ms. Wozniak to give us a report.
Thank you. The subject property is located on the west side of Lakeland Avenue, approximately 760 feet north of Union Parkway in Ronkonkoma. This property was the subject of a change of zone application back in 2017, where the property obtained a change of zone from Industrial Transition District to Business 3 District in order to use the parcel for outdoor storage, sales, and display of construction equipment. This property is still being utilized for that. However, now the applicant wishes to obtain a special permit for a vehicle repair, which will be accessory to the construction equipment sales use and only service vehicles that are going to be offered for sale. In addition, the applicant is also looking to modify the elevations for the proposed building and instead construct a prefabricated metal building. The previous elevations referenced in the TC showed a fiber cement building that was more appropriate for their location on Lakeland Avenue. Planning would recommend the applicant provide more appropriate upgraded elevations as Lakeland Avenue is a well-traveled roadway. All the other covenants in the TC are going to be met, which includes 25 feet of landscaping along Lakeland Avenue and 15 feet of landscaping along Ocean Avenue. The improvements specified in the TC will substantially upgrade the site. However, the applicant is requesting a pavement relaxation for the rear area of the site. Typically, planning is in support of this relief for vehicle storage areas as long as proper drainage is provided. However, there is some concern with storing vehicles that are in need of repair because chemicals may leak directly into the ground. Planning would suggest paving at least a portion of the rear area so there is adequate space to park leaking vehicles. Based on this, planning recommends the board reserve decision in order to determine if a paved area for leaking vehicles is necessary and to allow staff time to prepare appropriate conditions regarding comments heard about the newly proposed building elevations we saw tonight and tying the repair use specifically to the construction sales use.
Ms. Wozniak, before I turn to Mr. Bruno on the architectural side of this, the new elevations you've seen tonight, do your comments remain the same in your staff report?
I think that the elevations they provided this afternoon are much better, and I'm going to try to share them again.
Okay.
So you guys can
And
take a look, because
while
I know
you're
that my thing was kind of,
While you're sharing that, I'm gonna go to
Fully
Mr. Bruno to talk about the
there
elevations.
we go.
Yeah, they're an improvement, but most of the buildings along Lakeland Avenue are block buildings. It's very common along there. Certainly, obviously, I don't think we're concerned about the rear of the building. The sides you'll see somewhat. The front, I think, is significant, and I would rather see it more in keeping with the character of Lakeland Avenue. I actually agree with exactly with Ms. Wozniak's statement and planning's opinion on this.
Mr. Russo, any thoughts on improvements to the front of that building?
We only learned of the concerns about the building design last Friday when Ms. Wozniak shared with us that she had some input from a planning board member about the design. And so it went from a prefab building to the building that you're seeing in front of you. And as I indicated, the design now had veneer and stone in the front and had now added a canopy. And the colors that are being proposed on this building are similar in kind to the other property that the applicant owns at 1900, which is going to be the subject of the next hearing. But my question would be, in order to respond, would you like to see a entire front that is stone or brick in design? They would prefer to have the roof over and maintain the coloration that they put forward, which is white and blue. So is there a suggestion of what the board is looking for here? There's no architectural review committee that I can go to, so I'd like a little more direction if that's appropriate. And again, with the trucks that are in front, in the area that's permitted for them to show their new vehicles, and the estate fence and the plantings, given the size of the trucks, the building's facade can be further enhanced if that's what you're looking for, but it's not going to be completely visible from the street if you look at the site plan that Mr. Reisinger and Mr. Van Helden have given, because as you can see, there is a 25-foot face to curb setback on the site plan. Then there is the estate fencing that's being proposed. And then in front of that is where the new trucks are to be stored. And in my photographs, I show you the size of the trucks and show you, if you look in the photographs, how the backs of the trucks are up so that people can see into the dump trucks. So I understand the concern that Mr. Bruno is pointing out, but I'd like to be a little more specific in terms of what you're looking for then in the way of the facade or the front.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Bruno, you want to follow up, then Mr. Frugieri?
I'm sorry, that was, well, Mr. Russo, by the way, I find your defense of the building rather interesting. We don't have to worry about the way the building looks because we have these trucks with big backs up. So don't worry about it. You can't see it because we've got these huge trucks blocking everything. That was an interesting approach.
I'm just stating, Mr. Bruno, exactly what's there.
I just find that a very interesting defense, Mr. Russo, and well within your normal ability to find these unique things. Is the white on this now? Is this still panels, Mr. Russo? Because from a drawing perspective, it obviously looks the same. Is that still a metal building? The white panels that I'm looking at?
According to the applicant, I'm being told that they are, yes.
Okay, so basically what I have now is the difference, the change that you've made from the ones that we were originally given is really, it's still a pre-engineered building. You've just taken a few feet along the bottom, maybe 3 feet, and put some brick on the bottom of that. And you've got the canopy. Now, here's the interesting part.
Well, they're telling me that they're adding board and batten in the front, along with the veneer on the bottom, and also with the blue roof over.
Well,
so that's what I was told they were proposing.
Yeah,
I'm not the architect. I'm not the architect. I did not design the building.
Mhm.
I recognize your architectural experience, having worked with you in the private sector for quite some time. So I'm not trying in any way to challenge your suggestions. I'm just seeking for some direction.
Okay, I'm going to take this and go in the same direction you went, Mr. Russo, which is kind of interesting. All the enhancements you're telling me about are at the lower level. But here's the point. You just made the point that I'll never see the bottom part of the building. So to some degree, I'm really concerned about the upper part of the building because by what you just said, and I happen to a large degree agree with you on that. I'm saying if you make all the enhancements to the bottom, that's great, but the large trucks only leave me the upper part of the building to see. So that still is a pre-engineered building. It looks the same as it did before. I'm not saying that the bottom isn't better, but
if the board would prefer to see the entire front facade to be done in brick with a roof over and with coloration that they are suggesting, which is the whites and blues, they'd be happy to do that.
I think we'd like to see, I can only speak for one person, and you're right, we're not an architectural review, but I want to be very clear about that. It's one person's opinion, just as you said, my background is architectural. I would like to see it more consistent, and thank you. And I'd like to see it though more, I guess the block and wall is more consistent with what goes on Lakeland Avenue. So I guess I'm looking for that level of consistency.
And I recognize, because I did go there myself last Thursday and Friday and took the photographs that you were seeing. And I traveled that particular section of the roadway on a number of occasions. And I was trying to be observant as to what was going on the street. And I recognize in discussions with Ms. Wozniak that, you know, the board is trying to have a better quality building design being put in this area of Lakeland Avenue. So I'm not saying that your suggestions are inappropriate. I'm just trying to sort out where we go and how we get there. So
okay, well, Mr. Russo, we got that. We heard Mr. Bruno's comments. Let me go to Mr. Frugieri, and then certainly there's going to be time for you to meet with Ms. Wozniak after this evening to just maybe refine a couple of things and get better clarity so that it sounds like you're willing to work with the planning department, so that's a good thing. So
we certainly are on the board.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Frugieri.
Yeah, my comments are virtually identical to Mr. Bruno's. When I heard the argument being raised about the trucks in the front, it sort of struck me that all the architectural enhancements are at the lower level of the building. So possibly just on the facade, you know, keep the blue, that's attractive. Take the stone or brick treatment and raise that up a little higher, whether it's to the whole facade of the front of the building or 3/4 of the way up to maybe the line that's right above the cassone on the architectural. So you have the contrast of the stone and then the white that's on the extreme top of it. That might be one way to go.
Thank you.
Further questions from board members? Not hearing any. Mr. Russo,
Mr. Chairman?
Oh,
I think Mr. Mattermore has his hand raised, Mr. Chairman.
No, that was
Mr. Brown.
Brown.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, I just, the setback from Lakeland Avenue. And how far will the trucks be from Lakeland Avenue behind a fence?
I'll let Mr. Reisinger explain his site plan design that you have in front of you.
The site plan has a 25-foot landscaping buffer, a proposed 6-foot black estate fence. Then we have a 24-foot drive aisle, and then about, I believe it's 65 feet of outdoor display area. And then we have approximately a 6-foot concrete walk and then another 3 or so feet of landscaping right in front of the building. Yeah, being pointed out right there.
Okay,
So-
no, my point is that the trucks that are there now lined up along Lakeland Avenue will now be moved all the way back.
Correct. They'll be set back a lot further than they are currently.
And that will help with the appearance.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms. Wozniak, in terms of the, I don't know if you and Mr. Russo spoke further regarding the pavement in the back and the parking of vehicles back there that need to be repaired. Has that issue been resolved? Do we need to discuss that?
It hasn't. I know we spoke over the phone, and then they told me that they could park the leaking vehicles on the pavement. I just don't know where exactly, because I see the sales area, and then I do see, I guess, the employee and customer parking area, but I don't see like the paved area that I guess they were talking about over the phone of like where, let's say, the vehicles that really were leaking, you know, oils and things like that, where they would be specifically parked in the back area over here. Maybe they could point it out on the site plan.
Mr. Reisinger will address that.
Yeah, certainly. If you noticed, north of the building, there's a approximately 6,400 or so square foot sales area. That pavement section up there, the back half of it, where it is on the side of the building, would be available for any of the vehicles that would be prior to repair. They would be parked in that vicinity.
Okay, so well, based on that representation, I think we'll leave it Ms. Wozniak to meet with, as she'll be discussing with Mr. Russo, the application. If that meets our satisfaction, I think we're okay with it. Or if there's still a question, maybe we can draft a covenant restriction that says of vehicles, if that seems like it works on its surface, a restriction that says if they end up parked in the back, that we have to increase the paving. But I'll leave that to Ms. Wozniak to, in more detail back in the planning department, go over that with Mr. Russo, Mr. Reisinger, and figure that out. Ms. Wozniak, is there anything else on that topic? Does that make sense to you, the location that he's pointed out by the sales area?
Doesn't make sense, but it's also difficult because I'm the one looking at the screen and I know he can't point to it. So like you said, after today, tomorrow, I'll give him a call and just make sure, like I said, that
Perfect.
there's adequate room that these leaking vehicles will be parked on a paved area.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Reisinger, myself, and Mr. Van Helden would be happy to speak with and try and have a conference with Ms. Wozniak to work this out.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for that. Are there any further questions from the planning board?
Mr. Chairman, I have some comments to Madam.
Mr. Mattermore, go right ahead.
Thank you. One comment involves the following application, which I believe may be one that will interact with this one. That's a question, I guess, for Mr. Russo as to, I believe that these two applications, 2 and 3, are the same family ownership or responsibility, but I'm not positive of that. So I think they're related companies, or will be related companies to an extent. Is that true, Mr. Russo, or not?
The applications are owned by family members,
Right.
but they're not interrelated sites, according to what I've been told by the applicant.
Well, I just as an observation, we shouldn't be doing the architectural of this one in a vacuum if in fact what happens on the building next door may complement what is eventually arrived at by your experts as well as the planning department. This is an observation, but secondly, I'm very familiar with the business there. And for those of you who may not know, the name is a little bit misleading, this is the home of Casoni Trailer. Well, you can't go any place in the New York area without seeing a Casoni trailer that emanates from this location at Lakeland Avenue in the town of Islip. It's been a very successful business. I think they come to us with some major credibility in my mind, and had a lot of employees over the years. I think it's a compatible use. Certainly, we haven't had any discussion that it's not. So I'm just sort of commenting on the fact that this is a long-term, well-respected business that I know has been there for at least 40 years because I dealt with them 40 years ago, and they're still going, which is a tribute. So I just encourage them, hopefully, to work with staff, and certainly it's accurate that Lakeland Avenue at this location is a very busy place and it's very visible. And it probably does need a bit of a facelift, which is what we're working toward. I'm just saying it may be interrelated with the next application. And if those two can be thought of or complementing one another, it may be an opportunity for more progress with regard to the architecturals. Other than that, I'm very much in favor of it, and it's a step in the right direction. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Matamore. Is there anything further from the applicant?
I have nothing further at this time. I would hope that we could just hold the hearing open to work with Ms. Wozniak and then hopefully address and resolve everything at the next planning board meeting.
Perfect. I think we could probably close the public portion of the hearing and then just, you work with the planning staff and then come back to hopefully get an approval. That being
That would
said,
be fine.
is there a motion? Mr. Brown?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to close the public hearing and to reserve decision tonight to give the client an opportunity to work with planning staff.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Brown to close the public hearing and reserve decision this evening. Mr. Matamore has his hand up, so I'm going to give him the second on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, we're reserved. Thank you. Don't go too far, Mr. Russo, because item
I
number 3,
wasn't.
planning board application, public hearing, 1900 Lakeland Avenue, LLC, PB 2021-005, west side of Lakeland Avenue, County Route number 93, approximately 396 feet north of Union Parkway, Ronkonkoma, 1900 Lakeland Avenue. Applicant requests planning board special permits for the outdoor overnight parking of registered vehicles and unattached box trailers pursuant to 68-340.1C and P respectively. Site plan modifications may also be requested as part of this application. When you're ready, Mr. Russo, go right ahead.
I am, Mr. Chairman. For the record again, Eric Russo, Van Brunt, Jesuit and Russo, with offices at 140 Main Street, Sayville, New York, on behalf of the applicant, which is 1900 Lakeland Avenue, LLC, with Ms. Lynn Kunz-Rios as the managing member. The application before you was a site plan that had been previously permitted and approved. It has a valid building permit that has been renewed. There was a question by Ms. Wozniak earlier today that she thought that the building permit had expired, but I confirmed with the applicant later in the afternoon that on December 4th, she sent a check to the Islip Town Building Department, check 28829, and it cleared her bank at Bridgehampton National on December 18th. So there is valid building permit for the subject property. One of the questions that came up that Ms. Wozniak was concerned, and she wanted to know the tenants at the property. And there are 2 tenants. Casone Leasing is one. Modern Cabinetry is the other tenant. And there is the CO for the building. They renovated the building, and we provided a architectural elevation that shows the subject property, and it's through our photographs. And if you look at the photographs we gave, it's a blue and white structure with stone. I want to say it sort of got a little bit of stone glitter to it. The photograph there you can see, and it also shows the 2 tenants. If you go down in the photographs that I provided at 1900, you will see that it's fully landscaped in light of the prior site plan. And you can see on the north side of the building is Modern Cabinetry, which is the next tenant. and then Casone Leasing is on the south side. The parking lot has been paved and striped. There's grass that has been planted, shrubberies and trees that have been planted shown on the site. And keeping to the earlier comments, this site plan was developed in light of its prior approval. And I provided you with 21 photographs that I took myself showing you the area and the properties north and south, as well as across the street. And I think this is going towards the comments that the board mentioned previously. There's a grass area behind the parking area. There are 3 containers there, but we did have discussion with Ms. Wozniak that those containers have to be removed. They're not permitted by special permit. And we also reviewed and provided her with the types of cabs, trucks and trailers, truck flatbeds and trailers that would be stored on site. We reviewed with her the locations of those, and we've reviewed the conditions that were being proposed by the planning staff as part of the application. Mr. Reisinger will review the site plan if you have questions about that, and we can proceed from there. But I believe based on our review with Ms. Wozniak, under 68.3401C and P, we comply with all the special permit criteria that the planning board would ask us to meet and seek in terms of the Islip Town zoning code. And Mr. Reisinger will be able to address site plan if you would like him to do that at this time.
Unless you want to make a presentation, I can go to questions and see if anything comes up related to the site plan. You're certainly welcome to make a presentation if you prefer.
Mr. Reisinger, would you like to clarify anything additional?
At the moment, let's go to questions and we can cover whatever comes up.
Perfect. Anything further in the application, Mr. Russo?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see anybody signed up to speak on this application. Did anybody join later wishes to be heard? Not seeing anyone. I'm going to go back to Ms. Wozniak to give us a report.
Thank you. The subject property is located on the west side of Lakeland Avenue, approximately 400 feet north of Union Parkway in Ronkonkoma. It's improved with a 9,000 square foot office industrial building. Most recently, the property received site plan approval in 2019 to expand the parking facilities. And tonight, the applicant is looking to expand parking on site even further to accommodate the outdoor overnight parking of 10 unattached box trailers and 30 registered truck cabs in connection with the trailer and container leasing company. The proposed parking area is reducing the overall on-site landscaping. However, the site will still exceed the minimum landscaping requirements. The only site plan modification requested is a waiver for pavement. Instead, the applicant is proposing RCA for the outdoor trailer and vehicle parking area. The application is generally good as the parking area is set far from the street and the site will meet landscaping requirements. However, the backup aisle for the unattached box trailers conflicts with the registered vehicle parking, so parking may not always occur in the marked stalls as indicated on the site plan. In addition, the number of truck cabs proposed to be parked seems high given the space provided behind the building, as typical truck cabs can easily exceed 20 feet in length. And the applicant also discussed having flatbed trucks parked on the site as well. Based on the number and the height of the proposed parked vehicles, substantial planting should be provided east of the parking area in order to ensure this rear parking area is completely screened from view at all times, especially when the maximum number of vehicles are parked. Based on this, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions, which permits 30 registered vehicles and 10 unattached box trailers should the board feel comfortable with those numbers.
Thank you. Mr. Russo, I guess, Ms. Wozniak, and you have discussed the extra plantings on the east side and the berm. Is that agreeable to you?
Yes, we discussed it. The question that did come up was that the applicant was not willing to provide the berm, but the applicant was willing to add additional plantings, which was discussed with Mr. Reisinger as well. And the plantings that are being proposed now, instead of 6 to 8, I believe is what's shown on the plan, they were willing to go to 8 to 10 foot in height. And let's Mr. Reisinger address that issue.
Okay.
So yes, good evening, members of the board. Once again, Scott Reisinger, Nelson and Pope, and Hawkins, Webb and Yeager, 70 Maxis Road, Millville, New York. The plantings provided on the site plan show a double row of evergreen type plantings. They are also in front of a black vinyl chain link fence with the privacy slats. So the plantings that we provided, as Mr. Russo mentioned, are 6 to 8 foot in height as proposed on the plan. The applicant is willing to go to the 8 to 10 foot height to help screen further that rear yard area. There's also sets of deciduous trees that border the parking area that you see in front of the paved parking area in front, correct, over in there. The deciduous trees should also provide some additional screening, although it's not up against the fence that separates the two parking areas.
The photos show the growth of the trees,
Mhm.
and based on what I saw the other day, several of the plants have to be replanted and replaced because of the winter snows. If you see them in the photographs, but I believe the suggestion the applicant is willing to agree to and would go forward with, which was the taller plantings and the additional row.
Thank you. Ms. Wozniak,
Requested by
that's,
Ms. Wozniak.
Ms. Wozniak, those are the substantial plantings you're okay with?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there further questions from the board? Not seeing any. And the trailers in the back that are not permitted, those have been removed or are going to be removed?
No, if you look in the photographs,
Yes,
there
I
is a
see 'em.
photograph that I took. That's maybe a little better than that. There are 3 containers that are there placed on the graph. They are still there. Ms. Wozniak witnessed them over the weekend, and they're in my photographs, and I've spoken to the applicant. The applicant knows that they have to be removed. They're not permitted.
Okay, so just since there are no questions from the board, I haven't seen any hands go up. You know, we generally do not approve things when there are violations on the property. So obviously any approval that, if a motion is made tonight, will not only be subject to the conditions, but will be subject to those being removed.
And I explained to the applicant that they needed to be removed, and the applicants indicated they are to be removed.
Okay. Not sure when it was brought to your attention, but obviously, as you just said, they're still there and they're in the photos.
It
that
was
you
brought
provided
to my
me.
attention on Friday.
Okay. Okay, so that's a slight delay on that. So I'll leave it to my colleagues if they want to make a motion to approve subject to, or if we're reserving subject to them being removed, but I'm fine however the motion wants to be worded. Anything further from the applicant?
One moment, please. They can be moved in one day. So I can give you an affirmation if you would like, because that's what I was told by the applicant. They could be gone. If you put a condition in there that they be removed in one day, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. That being said, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a
Brown.
motion to close the hearing and grant the application, subject to the CNRs being executed.
And the additional condition, Mr. Brown?
Yes, and the addition that the trailers be removed.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Brown to close the public hearing and grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions, as well as the trailers, the 3 trailers being removed?
The 3 containers, they're not trailers.
Containers. Thank you. Being removed. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Frugieri. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Have a good evening and have a happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Item 4 on the agenda, Town Board application, public hearing, Sisters of St. Joseph, CZ 2021. I'm going to get that right once tonight. 2021-003, south side of 3rd Avenue, approximately 415 feet east of Brentwood Road, Brentwood, 1725 Brentwood Road. Applicant requests a change of zone from residence AAA to general service C and a minor subdivision in order to leave an existing skilled nursing facility. Good evening, Mr. Zapolsky, nice to see you on the other side of the dais this evening.
Mr. Chairman, very good to see you.
Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for hearing this application. My name is Philip Butler. I'm Land Use Counsel with Farrell Fritz PC for the applicant, the Sisters of St. Joseph. I'm obviously joined tonight by Rich Sapolsky, whom you all know very well. I'm also joined by Sister Eileen Kelly, the General Treasurer of St. Joseph's, Brenda Burton, the Administrator of the Maria Regina Residences, and Sister Karen Burke, the Coordinator of Land Use Initiatives for Sisters of St. Joseph's. Would I be able to share my screen momentarily? I'll return it after I'm done with my remarks.
We can make that happen in 1 second.
All right, so what I'm sharing for you this evening is an overview of the 211.5 acre property owned by the sisters. I figured this would be easier for the board to see than the subdivision, which is not in color. This gives you an idea of the scale of the property if you're not familiar. The proposed lot we're discussing is shown in the yellow outline here in the upper left-hand corner. The other shaded areas on this map are proposed conservation areas that are currently in the process of being preserved, which do have some bearing on this application, as I'll discuss momentarily. So just some background on the property and the sisters. The sisters are an order of religious nuns belonging to the Catholic Church. They own this property unsubdivided in Brentwood. It features a number of buildings, which include a convent, a chapel, school, a girls' group home, family services, and the assisted living facility that I'll be discussing. All of these uses are CO'd. The property also includes well in excess of 100 acres of farmland, open fields, and woodlands. The purpose of tonight's application is to fit into a larger scheme of strategic projects that the sisters are working on, which are aimed at both preserving large portions of the property for future enjoyment and also to maximize their use of the existing facilities on the property so that they continue to use the property for ministering, education, and to live. So it actually joins several other projects, which include a solar farm that was completed in 2019, which is reflected in the lower right-hand corner of the map that I'm showing you, and as well as a 43-acre woodland conservation easement that's in the works, and an existing 27-acre farmland easement with Suffolk County. So Maria Regina, which is shown in the proposed lot up in the left-hand corner, was opened in 2001. It is a state-licensed 188-bed skilled nursing facility. It was initially opened to house the aging members of the Order of the Sisters of St. Joseph's. And over time, in the 20 years since it's been opened, that residency has been expanded to other members of the faith, as well as lay persons preferring to reside in a, I'll call it a Catholic environment. That being said, the sisters aren't necessarily in the business of operating nursing homes. So as part of their strategic restructuring of their assets, they have decided to transfer ownership and operation of this facility to a private operator who has agreed to operate it at its current standards and also consistent with the traditions of the Catholic faith. Some of the money from the proceeds of the sale will be used to create improvements to the property that will allow other members of the order to continue to live, minister, and educate in place on the campus, even if they don't necessarily need to reside in the skilled nursing facility as they age. So some notes on the proposed subdivision and change of zone that we're discussing. So we're asking for this because as the facility and the land on which it sits is transferred to a private operator, it is no longer directly affiliated with the sisters. Therefore, we are subdividing the land and also seeking the change of zone to maintain the use to general service C from a residence AAA. Some important features to note about the subdivision, I'll just list them off. First, the lot will conform in all respects to the minimum lot requirements and the town subdivision and land development regulations. although the lot will front on 3rd Avenue as shown on this map, unless the town requires otherwise, access to the facility will be had via easements over existing internal roadways that already have access onto Brentwood Avenue to the west, which is of course the main thoroughfare, and then also onto 2nd Avenue and 3rd Avenue. The 55,700 square foot building that houses Maria Regina currently will not be changing. The only new additions to the proposed lot will be a 750 square foot building that houses a new Aqua Point sewage treatment plant, I should call it system, to replace the aging sanitary systems that currently serve the facility. And along with that, there will be a subsurface force main that will connect the Maria Regina residences to the system. The leaching field for that system, in case it's important to anyone, is no closer than 400 feet to the nearest offsite residence. So there is a large separation. As part of the approvals also, the sisters will be preserving an additional 33 acres of open space on the campus through an easement, I believe, with Suffolk County. This will bring the preserved area of the property up to 103 acres, or just under half of the entire site. The only relaxation we're asking for in connection with the subdivision and change of zone is to land bank 166 of the 288 required parking stalls. The remaining 122 are either already existing or will be installed as part of the project. We believe this is a good project, not only because it helps the sisters, but it is a residential use. It is compatible with the neighborhood, as is reflected by the fact that it's already been here for 2 decades. And it optimizes the use of the site so that it can be used for both public good and also for the sisters' benefit. Lastly, I would like to acknowledge that we have received the proposed conditions of approval from the board. I've reviewed them and I do not believe there's any objection to them, but I'm waiting for comment back from my client to make sure that they don't pose any operational issues for the facility. Pending confirmation, of course, we will sign them and return them in due course. So with that being said, that is plenty of talking from me. So I will turn it over to Mr. Zapolsky to go over any design details he would like to highlight, and then we are happy to entertain any questions from the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kelly, if I'm able to share my screen, that would be great. I think I can. And can everybody see the map that Philip already had up? I'm just going to move over to the engineering set that we've prepared and submitted to the town, because I would like to show how we approached the design of this shape of the lot that's being created and how we minimize the size of that lot. One of the important things to note is that the sisters' intention for conservation on this property included introducing innovative and alternative sanitary systems which reduce the total nitrogen loading to the earth and groundwater, as we know that that's a popular subject here on Long Island. And what we've done is we have done research on many IA systems and determined that the Aqua Point system that's being constructed right now was the best system for this use. You can see these dashed lines around the system. If you can see my cursor circling the actual Aqua Point building and system, it takes up this footprint right in here. But these are the offsets that are required. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it's a 100-foot clearance to the area of substantial use. You can see there's nothing going on in this area. It's basically wooded and grassed in that area. Then a 150-foot clearance to the property line. You can see here we've kept the property line close to that on this side and tangent to that on this side. And then a 200-foot clearance to habitable structures, which include there's some residential structures on the west side of the lot that we're proposing, and a commercial type building on the east side of the proposed lot that we're proposing. So the way that we approached the subdivision, an IA system is considered the same as a conventional septic system that you would normally see on a commercial application that's not attached to a sewage treatment plant. So it's I'll say a glorified septic tank and leaching pool, but it treats the waste to such a point that nitrogen levels are minimized. So with health department standards, you're still required to be within the density of of what's defined in the commercial standards for the health department. So for this building with 188 beds, we've calculated the flow, sanitary flow. It's 28,000 gallons per day and change. So we would require 47 acres to be able to have a use like this on one lot. So what we did was we minimized the property boundary around the building so we comply with zoning setbacks and densities and parking requirements and all of the town regulations. But we've preserved, and that lot is about 13, 14 acres. And we've preserved the other 32 acres on the main campus, almost like a transfer of development rights, where we've sterilized the great lawn that's in front of the main building on the campus. And we've had these conversations with the health department. They were very much in favor of that. And Peconic Land Trust is securing the 32-acre easement that allows us to progress forward with the subdivision through the health department. So I think it's a very nice way to conserve this large property and allow the sisters to move forward with the subdivision of this particular entity that's on the main campus. If I zoom into the map here, if I can zoom into the map here, you can see we have various lines inside the property line. These are the easements that we'll be working with during the subdivision process. There are several utility easements. Since Suffolk County Water Authority has taken over the Brentwood Water District, there are water mains that have existed on campus that have served the various buildings on site. We went over all of the mains with Suffolk County Water Authority. They've taken ownership of them, and we've granted them easements over the property. As this property is subdivided and sold, those easements will have to remain in place. We have access easements that benefit both parties so that people coming to and from each of the buildings can drive over the existing road network that we've all been used to for years and continue to access the buildings the way they've been accessed over the decades. Let me just back out here for a second. So you can see on the map, it's on 2 pages since the property is so large, but the conservation easement that's being created is down here. And you all know it as the Great Lawn at the main entrance to the campus here. Let's see. So the water service, even though there's water mains within the easements on this property, we have to create a new water service to the building that will remain on parcel A. The rest of the water services will remain as is. The gas and electric services that come to this building now will be maintained as existing, and utility easements will be granted where necessary. And the sanitary system will be transferred to the new IA system, which is currently under construction. Parking. So there is existing parking that is on the site now. I just want to zoom in and show you that the current operations don't even consume the existing parking that we have on the site here, but you can see there's cars along this area and back here, and there's some inside the parking area. But other than that, the parking does not overflow the existing boundaries that we're containing in the subdivision. So for the parking requirement for this facility for 188 beds, would be 1 space per bed. So you have 188 spaces, and then a half a space for every staff member, or 1 space per 2 staff members. And with 200 staff on the maximum shift, that would be an additional 100 spaces. So where we need 288 spaces, we have 122 existing in pavement here. And we're planning on land banking the rest on the grassed and wooded area across from the facility. If you remember, this area is where the IA system, the sanitary system, is going. And we've dashed in the possibility of parking being able to be built if the board or the planning department sees that necessary, because there is a parking issue with the new management. If that happens to be, you reserve the right to be able to ask the applicant to build that parking out. We don't see that being an issue because it hasn't been an issue for years, but there's plenty of land here to be to allow that. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Philip, or if you have any technical questions, I'm here to answer those. And thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing to add to the presentation, so we're happy to respond to any questions or comments for the public.
Great. So we'll go to the public comment, and then we'll go to the staff report and come back for some questions. I have Sheila Jones. Ms. Jones, once you're ready, go ahead. Just unmute, you can speak.
Unmute.
There you
Hello?
go. We can hear you now.
Hi. Yes, I was typing in my questions because the last time they did building on the property, each time they did construction, my whole entire house shook to its foundation. And the plans that were set forth for those solar panels, which is the last big item that they had put together, it did not. It indicated that there was going to be a thick line of trees were going to remain between my home and there and the solar panels, and that has not happened. So as you turn onto my cul-de-sac behind my home, all you see is the solar panels. So it's definitely a different view, and it's very industrial look. So and I've spoken to Ms. Karen Burke several times about it, and it doesn't seem to have made any changes.
May I respond?
Yes.
Okay. So I apologize. My name is Phil Butler, Ms. Jones. I was not the attorney who worked on this project, and the one who did, Chris Kent, is actually away this week. What I will say, though, is that I'm going to assume that the solar farm is under the management of a separate entity from the sisters, even though it is on their property. If there's an issue with fulfillment of conditions or site plan requirements, we can look into that. I was not aware that there was an issue or incomplete work done, but it is something that we can definitely take on. So I know you probably want this addressed sooner than later. So following the hearing, I will definitely be discussing this with Sister Karen and the rest of the individuals at the Sisters of St. Joseph, and we'll get to the bottom of it.
I've talked to Ms. Karen. I've talked to Ms. Karen several times about this. Mm-hmm. Beyond the issue with my home shaking whenever they do construction, there's no obstruction between my property and all the solar panels, and the other 3 sides of the solar panels are completely obstructed by trees. My side is the only one that they eliminated all the trees. I'm not sure why they would do that. And I tried to tell them as they were doing they're tearing the trees down that they're getting too close, and they continue to do so.
Well, this
Mr. Butler?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm going to follow the protocol of the meeting, so I'm going to hold your commenting in between here so we can get Ms. Jones' comments, speak to the rest of the public comment period, get a report from Mr. Colgan, then we'll come back and address the landscaping in that area.
All you need to do is drive onto Rihanna Court, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. That's the big elephant in the room.
Okay, so the landscaping, the trees in that area is is your
They
concern.
eliminated all the trees. There was no need to go up close to the fence like that. There was plenty of trees. They cut them all down on my side. And that's the only side that they did that to, which I don't understand why. When I said several times to Ms. Burke that was an issue.
Okay, Ms. Jones, I understand the landscaping issue, and I certainly will address that with the applicant.
It's more than a landscaping issue. Instead of trees, it's just complete industrial look. All I see is the solar panels.
Yep.
And anybody who comes up onto my road, that's all they see is solar panels. So with this new project that they're doing now, the difference between once everything is approved, right, approved a certain way that there's not going to impact the community, but then when the construction people start constructing, they make it turns out different, and then there's no way to stop it.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. We will address that, the construction and the site plan as well as look back at the issue from the previous project, if there's something we can do to assist with that.
Okay. Also, can I ask another question? That property was mostly a lot of trees previously. Now that they eliminated all those trees, and so it's all those animals are coming onto our property. All different kinds of animals are coming to our property looking for food. There's no foliage for them.
Well, hopefully with some of the easements we're talking about, I'll address that as well with the applicant. Thank you.
There's foxes, there's all kinds of wild animals are coming onto our properties. You want me to take pictures?
Nope, I understand what you're saying, Ms. Jones. We will talk about.
I'm the only homeowner, I believe, who's completely impacted by the Sister of St. Joseph's construction, because I'm the home that has direct impact with that property. I have the most view of that, and it's my side. They eliminated all the trees, all the foliage, and I'm not sure why they did that. The other three sides are completely obstructed by trees.
Ms. Jones, I thank you for that. We will address those issues. I understand.
And the animals, because I have children, and the foxes are now coming onto my property. So,
Ms. Jones, I understand the two issues you've raised, and we will address both of them with the applicant, both the animals.
Okay, and then that's also going to be considered with the new construction that they're doing.
Yep, I have it both. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There are other people in the room. I'm not sure if anyone else wants to speak on this application that did not already sign up for it. If you do, please let us know now by raising your hand. We'll allow you to speak. Not seeing anyone else raising their hand to speak, I'm going to ask Mr. Colgan to give us a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As stated by the applicant, this application proposes to subdivide off the existing skilled nursing facility from the Greater Sisters of St. Joseph property. The change of zone is necessary for the facility to become a principal use on its own property because the existing residence AAA zoning district does not permit said facilities. There are no known complaints with regards to the existing use. The fundamental change is that a sewage treatment plant will be required for the newly created property based on Suffolk County Health Department requirements. The facility will not be located near any sensitive neighbors. If this were a new general service C facility, the staff would likely view this favorably as it is located in a bucolic setting and it is in close proximity to a downtown. It is the staff's understanding that the greater property is to be preserved for its current uses as well as agricultural purposes. This is the first I've heard of any complaints with regards to the solar panels. If the board would like, I can certainly reach out to the engineering staff who would oversee what the site plan requirements would be and observe whether or not any illicit clearing happened or if any supplemental plantings need to occur. But based on that, the staff has no objection to the applicant's proposal to subdivide off the skilled nursing facility. So we'd recommend the board grant the application subject to the attached CNRs, and we can look further into the solar panel facility.
Thank you. So Mr. Colgan, you sort of answered my first question, but I think we want to make sure that certainly the trees, if any, were removed that were not supposed to be removed, as well as any landscaping in that area that was supposed to be in place that was removed. And if it was okay to be removed, if there's something that we can do or request of the applicant to do to provide other landscaping that might help that that view from that cul-de-sac when people are driving down that street. Mr. Butler, I know you started speaking about it before. Can you address that concern?
Sure. I mean, I really don't have much more to add. Just I wanted to point out that the only construction that is proposed with this project is the 750 square foot house for the, or building rather, for this new system. That is several thousand feet away from Ms. Jones's property. So I don't believe she will be experiencing any of the prior issues she experienced with respect to the construction. Again, the facility itself is remaining completely as it presently is. Also, the 43 acres to the west of the solar farm, that is what is being preserved with the woodlands easement. So, presumably the wildlife on the property will continue to reside in that portion of the woods that remains. And I think that really is it. We will certainly work with Mr. Colgan and the engineering department if there are any unsatisfied requirements from that prior approval for the solar farm. Any vegetation that needs to be replaced, we'll certainly look into it, and we'll address the issue that way.
So, Mr. Butler, your answer of we'll look into that is if the town says something needs to be replaced or was removed that should be replaced, you'll take care of that?
Well, I'm only being ambiguous about it because, again, I didn't work on the solar farm, so I don't know what the site plan for that project shows. I don't know if there was supposed to be vegetation put back or not. If there was, then presumably we're still under an obligation to complete the site plan. So that's the only reason I'm being somewhat vague.
If it's the appropriate time, I'd be glad to join the conversation.
Absolutely. Please go right ahead, Sister.
Okay, Sister Karen Burke, I coordinate the land initiatives for the Sisters of St. Joseph, and I did coordinate the project for the solar field. So the construction happened from September to December of 2017, and the solar field has been operational since January of 2018. During the time of construction, Ms. Jones did speak to me several times. She is correct about her viewpoint. The town required that a stockade fence be constructed around the solar field. So the stockade fence prevented her from seeing much of the foliage that she used to see that was more eye level. So when you enter onto her property, you now see a stockade fence, and above it, you do see solar panels. But that was a requirement of the town that we put up the stockade fence, and she did not want us to do that. But we didn't want to put up the stockade fence either, but it was required for us to do that. So that did, she's absolutely right. I'd much prefer for her to be able to see through what was a chain link fence and to be able to see trees. But she is not able to see the trees that she used to be able to see. The trees still exist there, and the vegetation and its shrubbery, it's varied woodland vegetation there. We have white pine trees at all different age groupings, so there's different generations of trees. So it does exist, she's not able to see it. Stu worked closely with us on all of the vegetation that was required around the solar field. And although we do have a power purchasing agreement, the solar company is required to maintain the vegetation within the solar field. But what Ms. Jones is referring to is actually land that's outside of the solar field. And it's land between the solar field and her fence. Trees were not removed from that area. It's outside of the solar field where what she's referring to. But it did change her viewpoint, absolutely. As I coordinate all of our environmental programs, I'm very much, I feel for her because I would prefer to have that tree view too. So I'm sorry that her view was changed, but she's absolutely right. It did change. She's looking at a stockade fence now with just whatever she can see above it is just a few trees and then beyond to a solar field.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you for correcting me.
The property, just a question on this, the property between the stockade fence and her property is owned by whom?
Sisters of St. Joseph.
Okay.
And the solar field is owned by, the property is all owned by the Sisters of St. Joseph, correct?
My only question there is there ability there to put landscaping between the stockade fence and her property?
Yeah, there is. It's just that the stockade fence blocks it. That's the problem. Vegetation is there. We have a stockade fence Then there's probably about at least 20, maybe 15 yards of land, woodlands, and then it's the solar field. But the stockade fence prevents her from seeing the woodlands that's currently there. If you bring up the map again, I'd be glad to point that out. But you know, there are trees there. So if you look at where it says, yeah, exactly where the arrow is there, those trees exist. The stockade fence is right along the property. No, oh, there, that's where the stockade fence was required. So there's a chain link fence around the solar array, but the stockade fence, so yeah, that's where the chain link, but that's where the stockade fence was required. So that's right on our property line, and the town required us to construct that.
Okay, so yeah, so there's no property between the fence and the neighbor's property. The stockade fence is on the property line itself, so landscaping there. Okay.
Exactly, yes.
So the only question to be explored, Mr. Colgan, with the applicant would be whether or not there was anything that could be planted that would height-wise go over the stockade fence, whether or not.
And there we've added vegetation to that area, but unfortunately, it's only 3 years later. So it just hasn't grown above the level of this. It's a 6-foot stockade fence.
Got it. Yeah, so again,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, it's yeah. Is there any possibility of moving the stockade fence back to the solar panels, just leaving the chain link fence along there? Where they would still have the same view, but if you had the stockade closer to the panels, right where the arrow is, I think that help.
Yeah, it was the town that required the solar company to construct that stockade fence at the time. I did not agree with the stockade fence, and I asked not to because specifically for this reason. I heard what Ms. Jones was saying. We requested not to have to put up the stockade fence, and it was at the expense of the solar company. So it wasn't even an expense issue for me. It was an environmental issue, rightfully so. But they were required to do it at great cost. And now, and the chain link fence was required to be around the solar field.
My question is, and Mr. Colgan, I'm gonna leave this for you to work with the applicant on, is are there, I mean, they said there are new plantings in there. Will they grow higher, which will obstruct the view from coming up the street? Or if not, can something be planted in there that would grow to a taller height, either on the inside of the fence or even moving the fence, either way, but that'll grow to a taller height that'll obstruct the view on an angle? That's from that street, from the cul-de-sac, is really my question.
Yeah, we'll have to verify that with presumably Stu, who oversaw it on engineering side, and verify what's growing there now, how tall those are going to be, what else could be infill planted. I'm not exactly sure because I simply don't have access to any of the landscaping plans that may have been prepared in conjunction, with this site plan application. So it's an open-ended question, and we'll get the answers for you.
Thank you on that. Are there questions from other board members? I'm not seeing any. So the only thing that I would ask then that would be added to any of the conditions is if in fact something can be planted in there that'll bring the height up to obstruct the view, that be done as a condition.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Ruggieri.
Yeah, just as a way of a suggestion, I mean, looking at the aerial, there seemed to be a pretty dense area of vegetation between the speaker's property and the solar farm. And if she has a stockade fence right up along her property and she's still seeing the solar farm over that stockade fence, that just means that vegetation between there is pretty low, and it will probably grow over time. Maybe if you can identify a short area right along the perimeter of the solar farm and put right there, that area there, and possibly put, say, a double height of stockade fence so that she can't see the solar panels themselves. She'll see a stockade fence, which will eventually blend into the natural vegetation. And then over time, the vegetation will grow to a height where you won't even need that stockade fence area. Yeah, right in there. Just to identify the panels that she's seeing, and maybe put up a couple of stockade fences high enough so that she wouldn't be able to see it. And that's would be a fairly inexpensive fix to this problem.
I agree with Mr. Frugieri's comments, and the only ask is, do you verify that the vegetation there is something that was planted that will grow to a height that'll grow taller? I'm in total agreement on that. Mr. Butler, did you want to comment on those suggestions?
Yeah, I don't agree with the comment in principle. I would just ask, it seems like the sisters have done everything in accordance with the prior site plan for that solar farm. And notwithstanding that there is now an issue with the vegetation perhaps not having grown in yet to a certain height, I would ask that we not condition anything to do with this subdivision and this site eventual site plan for this facility on something that has to do with the completely separate site plan for the solar farm. The facility and the sewage treatment plant have nothing to do and are nowhere near the solar farm. So we're working, frankly, on very tight deadlines to get the new treatment facility up and running and complete, and for the transfer of ownership. So I don't want to get bogged down in a back and forth over what gets planted and when, if it really has no bearing on this project. So I'm sure the sisters and Sister Karen can speak for herself. I'm sure the sisters are willing to look into this and work with their neighbors. I just don't want us to get held up on project A for something that's now lingering from a separate project that they've already complied with.
Mr. Colgan?
Yeah, I'll just point out, I understand Mr. Butler's concerned about moving this forward. If we were to table this to the next meeting, it shouldn't hold up that critical path we're getting onto the April change of zone date. So if it addresses everyone's concerns, we can take the next 2 weeks to work with Stu and town engineer when he comes back, and just again figure out what their requirements were. It's possible that these requirements were put in place by the Division of Engineering. It is standard to put in buffer fencing, such as the stockade fence, that may have required clearing to do so. I'm not, I don't have the landscaping plan in front of me to show everyone what plants were required to be put in place, but that we do have a protocol that where, the Division of Engineering verifies all that. So it's very possible they did everything the Division of Engineering asked them to do. But, I would need time to verify that.
I think that's entirely reasonable. So Sean, just to clarify, you're saying that we would come back for another meeting and still be able to get onto the town board hearing for April?
If I get all the information in time by engineering, we could be in a position to put this on for a decision on March 24th with all the information the board is asking for.
Okay, thank you.
That being said, are there further questions or anything further from the applicant?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a motion? Mr. Bruno?
I'd make a motion to reserve decision to give planning some time to investigate the situations that have been discussed tonight, and then we'll take it up. We'll take it up later in the hopefully the very near future.
Thank you. It's a motion by Mr. Bruno to reserve decision this evening. Mr. Bruno, is that close the public hearing and reserve decision, or just reserve decision?
Close the hearing and reserve decision.
Motion by Mr. Bruno to close the public hearing and reserve decision. Is there a second to that? Second by Mr. Mattermore. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. We look forward to seeing you at the next meeting with the answers to the questions. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you to the board. Have a good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good seeing you again, Mr. Sapolsky. Item 5 on the agenda, Town Board application, public hearing. Dennis Foreman, CZ 2013-004, north side of Sunrise Highway, State Route 27, approximately 300 feet east of Lincoln Avenue, Holbrook, 5449 Sunrise Highway. Applicant requests a change of zone from Business 2 District and Industrial 1 District to all Industrial 1 District, and a modification of deed, covenants, and restrictions associated with TC 4052 in order to construct a mini storage warehouse. Applicant further requests a waiver of submission of a surety bond to cover the cost of demolition of all or part of the mini storage warehouse pursuant to 68-344B1. Site plan relaxations are also required as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant, and I will note for the record that Mr. Bruno has recused on this matter. Once you're ready, just unmute, Mr. Foreman, and you're good to go.
Are you there?
There you go. We can hear you now.
All right. How you doing, Gary? No. Hello?
Go ahead, Mr. Foreman, you can make your presentation.
Yes. Dennis Foreman, 10 Salt Meadow Court, Bayport. And my application is for self-storage. It's going to be not like a normal self-storage like the ones I have had in the previous, which were very successful. Most of the people there know me and what I've done over the years. This is going to be built with steel insulated 3-inch panels like the car dealers, the nice veneer finish on the outside. To the east of it is a sump and an apartment complex, Saddle Rock, which they have a self-storage right bordering my property. To the rear is industrial bordering the property. And to the west side, it's about 300 feet to the road. And I got Teachers Federal Credit Union next to me. What I proposed, the building is set back about 120 feet from the road. So it's not sticking out on the road. It's approximately 36 feet high, 36 feet, 8 inches. As far as, I'm also in there with the landscaping, I needed a relaxation because we put a basin in which the engineering seemed to favor. And that took up some of the landscaping, but that would be landscaped as well. As far as the bond, I mean, I've been successful. This is going to be a 3-story building open. If it was ever to close down as a self-storage, it could still be used as a office building, even though there'll be a covenants against it. The basin, as far as anybody else on Sunrise Highway, there's not much buffer in front of any place along there. Most of the stuff is right on the road. I got a big buffer in the front, almost an acre. So the relaxation isn't really on the landscaping. It's determining if the basin is part of the landscaping. I apologize that you didn't get the architectural drawing before. I hope you got it because I sent it in, but apparently you didn't get it. I emailed it to you before, but if you could see, it's no doors on the exterior. I know the town doesn't like seeing self-storages with doors. It's not like my other ones. This is like top notch. All the way around, there's no doors. It's all climate control interior. The project doesn't require much traffic. 1 bathroom, no impact on the community, brings in plenty of tax dollars. I brought in tens of millions of dollars over the years in the 3 facilities I had. I just sold them. I guess I'm open for questions.
Thank you. We're going to go to a public hearing and then a staff report and we'll come back. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard on this application? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Mr. Colgan to give us a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application originated in 2013 with a proposal for a smaller self-storage building. The planning board had reserved decision at that time. The current proposal seeks to increase the FAR from the original proposal to approximately 1 in accordance with recent town code updates for the industrial 1 district. The key differences between the subject proposal and the formal one is A, the larger building, B, increased landscaping along Sunrise Highway, and C, architecture with higher quality materials and design. The applicant will be able to comply with all but 2 of the criteria for the larger FAR component. That's the 25% overall landscaping and the surety bond. The applicant claims he can meet the 25% landscaping by providing dry wells in lieu of the recharge basin in the front yard. Town engineer had indicated that the town would prefer to see the recharge basin as it is a more environmentally beneficial means of addressing stormwater and drainage. The subdivision and land development regulations do not permit the buffer, which you saw along the eastern line of the site plan, to be counted in overall landscaping. If the board were to permit a buffer relaxation, then the standard buffer would still be in place, but it could count towards the overall landscaping, which the applicant would need to comply with the bonus criteria for the FAR of 1. The staff feels we can support this for 2 reasons. 1, the applicant is meeting the spirit and intent of the bonus criteria with the recharge basin. And 2, the buffer area to the east abuts a recharge basin and storage units for the adjacent apartment complex. 2 components of that development which are arguably the least sensitive and least in need of a buffer area adjacent to it. Lastly, the board has issued waivers of surety bonds in the past. There does not appear to be any distinguishing factors between this application and the others with regards specifically to the surety bond. The staff believes that the minimal impacts of these relaxations are outweighed by the benefits of having a relatively passive use on Sunrise Highway, and recommends that the board grant the application subject to the attached CNRs.
Thank you, Mr. Colgan. Any questions from the board? I think the application looks well. Mr. Colgan, just to clarify, I want to make sure, because I want to be able to differentiate this application if we were to grant that buffer relaxation down to nothing, that in this case, the town engineer has in fact asked the applicant to go ahead with the basin as opposed to the dry wells. And if he did not have the basin, had the dry wells, he would otherwise have met the landscaping requirement. Therefore, we would not have to do this.
Correct. And to the applicant's benefit, the recharge basin, or we can even call it, almost like a rain garden, it will have landscaping in it. So, it's just the way the definitions work in the subdivision land development regulations. If there's water in it, it doesn't count as landscaping, unfortunately. But, again, when we weigh all these factors into it, we do think the current proposal is an overall benefit. And that's why the staff is in support.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just wanted to make it clear that it's something that we've asked the applicant to do that's requiring him to ask for the relaxation, that we're going to ultimately end up granting him, that we're not just doing this because the applicant's asking for it. He's actually doing something affirmatively that we've asked him to do. And for those reasons, he shouldn't be penalized. If there's nothing further from the board, is there anything further from the applicant?
No.
Okay, that being said, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to
Mr.
make a
Brown.
motion to close the hearing and grant the application subject to the CNRs.
There's a motion by Mr. Brown to close the public hearing and grant the application subject to the CNRs. Mr. Matamore had his hand up before anybody could say anything, or I could ask for a second. So we'll take that as a second from Mr. Matamore. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted. Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Foreman.
Thank you.
Take care, Dennis.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, Town Board application recommendation item, Pond Road LLC by Robert Affinita, CZ 2020-020, west side of Pond Road, approximately 640.15 feet south of Peconic Street, Ronkonkoma, 2174 Pond Road. Applicant requests a change of zone from Industrial 1 District to Industrial 2 District for outdoor storage of equipment and materials. Site plan modifications may be required as part of this application. Good evening, Mr. Garbarino.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. William Garbarino, 40 Main Street, Sayville, New York. This application, we were in front of this board back at the new year, either before or after, I'm not sure, but we were in front of you. And since that time, I've had an opportunity to submit revised drawings to planning. In fact, I submitted one today. Where they had a recommendation of a buffer to the north side, which we are complying with. And also we specified the location on the site of where we're going to have outdoor storage. Really, since my client bought this piece of property, since we were on the last hearing, we've done extensive cleaning of this property. You only have to look at an aerial to see that. I really have no further comments tonight. I would accept possible rebuttal, but I'd rather defer to planning now to give their report.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Garbarino. Let's go to Mr. Colgan for a report. Not a good sign for you, Mr. Garbarino.
I know that. I wouldn't
Silence.
stay off.
There we go.
I don't know what's going on with the computer, but it's fixed now.
Thank God.
This application was previously heard in October last year. The primary concern raised by the board was the nature of the proposed outdoor storage. The covenants have been drafted to limit the outdoor storage to construction-related trucks and materials. The materials will be limited to 18 feet in height. Given that the location of the property is in close proximity to other industrial 2 zoning properties. Staff has no objections to the applicant's request and would recommend that the board grant the application subject to the attached covenants and restrictions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Garbarino?
No questions.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, is there a motion? Mr. Matamore, thank you for beating Mr. Brown this time. Just unmute and it's all you. You're muted, Mr. Matamore.
Yes, I make a motion that we approve the hearing, and I'm happy that the issues discussed and told to us by Mr. Garbarino and Mr. Colgan have been worked out. And I move to grant the application.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Matamore to grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions, Mr. Matamore?
Yes, please. I'm sorry.
Subject to the covenants and restrictions. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bruno, I'm going to give it to you this time. Brian was close, but second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Good evening. Item 7, major subdivision decision item, Settlers Road subdivision, Hop Hog, MS 2007-005, northerly terminus of Settlers Road, 120 feet north of Old Post Road, Hop Hog. Applicant requests a 90-day extension of the final approval on a 10-lot major subdivision. Is the applicant here, or are we going right to Mr. Gonzalez?
Just to the staff report, Mr. Chairman.
Once your camera went on, I thought that's where we were going. Go ahead, Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This application was last heard on December 9th and granted a 90-day extension to fulfill all requirements of the final resolution for that major subdivision. The applicant was working on a release of mortgage premises being recorded at the Suffolk County Clerk's office, as that is required in order for the title company to verify to the town that no mortgages exist on the property and any portions being offered for eventual dedication or easements. That document was submitted back in December. However, based on staff shortages, there are significant delays in the processing and release of any documents that are submitted to the county clerk's office. Delays in general, not specifically for this particular application. I did speak with someone at the county clerk's office who did verify that things are running quite behind over there. So I did get notice from their attorney as well as their insurance company that those documents were submitted back in December. They have also commenced the process for the issuance of the required performance bond and are committed to completing the requirements of the final resolution. Those details are included in the attached correspondences from their attorney and their insurance company, as I stated before. So at the moment, they're kind of in a holding pattern while the county kind of works through, the piles of paperwork, unfortunately, but they're doing everything they can at this point. So based on this, staff recommends the board grant the allowable 90-day extension of the final approval subject to the same final resolution.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Gonzalez? Not seeing any. Is there a motion, Ms. Cruz?
I make a motion to grant and allow the 90-day extension of the final approval, subject to the final resolution.
Wow, that was a very concise motion by Ms. Cruz there, word for word. It's a motion by Mr. Cruz. Motion by Ms. Cruz to grant the 90-day extension for final approval. Is there a second? Yeah, Mr. Frugieri, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
abstentions, the extension is granted. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Frugieri to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
By Mr. Matamore.
I'll second.
All in favor, opposed, abstentions. We're adjourned. Have a good night. Stay safe. See you in